Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the stars shift back to normal space. After 18 months of faster-than-light travel, they had finally reached their destination. The Kepler 442 system stretched out before them, supposedly empty according to Earth's long-range scans. "All systems normal, Captain," reported Commander Lisa Hayes from her station. "We've successfully entered the Kepler 442 system." Jake nodded and walked to the main viewing screen. 3 planets orbited the yellow star, with a 4th world sitting in what Earth scientists called the habitable zone. According to their data, this system should be completely uninhabited, perfect for humanity's first deep space colony. "Danny, start your scans," Jake ordered. "Let's see what we're working with." Chief Science Officer Danny Rodriguez bent over his instruments. His fingers moved quickly across the controls as sensor data flowed across his screens. After a few minutes, he looked up with confusion written across his face. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange. There's a massive artificial structure in orbit around the 4th planet." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Are you sure? Our deep space telescopes never detected anything." "Positive, sir. It's huge. At least 50 kilometers long and 20 wide. Definitely not natural." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. They were not the first intelligent species to reach this system. Jake made his decision quickly. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. "Lisa, get our weapons online, but don't target anything yet. Danny, I want full sensor sweeps of the entire system." The ship's alarm began blaring as the crew rushed to their positions. Jake had trained for first contact scenarios, but he had never expected to encounter alien technology so far from Earth. "Captain," Danny called out, "I'm detecting multiple smaller ships around that station. They're moving toward us." On the main screen, 3 sleek vessels appeared. They were unlike anything in human design. Smooth, organic curves that seemed to flow like water. Each ship was about half the size of the Defiant, but moved with incredible grace. "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Amy Collins. "It's not in any Earth language, but our computers are trying to decode it. Put it through." The speakers crackled with strange sounds, clicks, hums, and musical tones that hurt Jake's ears. After a few seconds, the computer began translating. "Unknown vessel, you have entered hegemony space without permission. Identify yourselves immediately or face the consequences." Jake looked at Lisa, who nodded grimly. This was it. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence, and it wasn't going well. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Defiant. We come from the planet Earth and mean no harm. We were not aware this system was claimed by anyone." The response came quickly. "Earth, we have no record of this world. You will dock with our station for inspection and questioning. Any resistance will be met with force." Jake didn't like the sound of that. "Negative. We're willing to meet and discuss the situation, but we won't surrender our ship." A new voice came over the speakers, deeper and more authoritative. "I am High Arbiter Thexlon of the Hegemony Council. Your species is unknown to us, but your arrogance is familiar. You will comply with our demands or be destroyed." "Danny, what are we looking at in terms of firepower?" Jake whispered. "Their ships are heavily armed, Captain. Energy weapons, some kind of defensive shields. But their technology seems different from ours. Older in some ways, more advanced in others." Jake made his choice. "High Arbiter, we agree to meet with you, but it will be on neutral ground. We'll send a shuttle with our diplomatic team." There was a long pause before the alien responded. "Very well. One of your small ships may dock with our station. Any weapons will be detected and considered an act of war." An hour later, Lisa led a small team to the alien station. Jake watched from the bridge as their shuttle disappeared into the massive structure. The station was even more impressive up close. Its hull seemed to shimmer with some kind of energy field. "Captain," Danny said quietly, "I've been analyzing their technology. This isn't just advanced, it's ancient. Some of these energy signatures suggest their civilization is thousands of years old." That worried Jake. Ancient civilizations usually meant established territories and old grudges. Humanity was walking into a situation they didn't understand. When Lisa returned 3 hours later, her face was grim. She briefed Jake in his private quarters away from the crew. "It's worse than we thought, Jake. The hegemony isn't just one species. It's 12 different alien races working together. They've controlled this entire sector of space for over 3,000 years. What do they want with us? That's the problem. They see us as primitive newcomers who accidentally stumbled into FTL travel. They expect us to become their subjects like dozens of other species they've conquered. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. And if we refuse, they'll destroy us as an example to others. But there's something else, Jake. Danny needs to hear this too. They called the science officer to Jake's quarters. Lisa continued her report. There's strip mining worlds throughout this system. Not just empty planets, I saw evidence of a civilization that was wiped out recently. The hegemony doesn't just conquer species, they erase them completely. Danny's face went pale. Captain, we have to warn Earth if they're willing to commit genocide. We can't warn anyone if we're dead, Jake replied. What's their military strength like? Overwhelming. High Arbiter Thexlon showed me recordings of their last conquest. They have hundreds of ships, each one larger than ours. Their weapons technology is incredibly advanced. Jake stood up and walked to his small window. The alien station hung in space like a dark omen. Humanity had reached for the stars and found them already claimed by killers. There's one more thing, Lisa added. They're giving us 24 hours to decide. Submit to the hegemony or be destroyed. And our chances in a fight? Against 3 ships? Maybe. Against their entire fleet? 0, Jake nodded slowly. He had trained for many scenarios, but not this one. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence had become a choice between slavery and death. Get me all department heads in the briefing room in 1 hour, he ordered. It's time to let the crew know what we're facing. As Lisa and Danny left, Jake remained at his window. Somewhere behind them, light years away, Earth continued its peaceful orbit around the sun. His people had no idea that their first representatives among the stars were about to make a decision that would change everything. The countdown had begun. News of the human encounter spread through hegemony space, faster than their fastest ships. On the capital world of Vrak Prime, the ruling council gathered in their ancient chamber of black stone and glowing crystals. Fleet Admiral Crickstar stood before the assembled representatives of 12 species. His insectoid body gleamed under the harsh lights as he spoke to the council. These humans refuse to submit, he clicked in the ancient trade language. They demand to be treated as equals. A crystalline being named Zelthara chimed in response. Her voice sounded like wind through glass. Perhaps we should study them first. Their technology appears different from anything we have encountered. Different means nothing, Crickstar replied coldly. We have conquered 47 species over 3 millennia. These mammals will be number 48. The Vraktar had dominated the hegemony military for generations. Their warrior culture valued strength above all else, and they saw the human response as an insult that demanded punishment. Elder Thexlon, the spider-like being who had met with the human delegation, raised one of his 8 arms. The humans showed no fear when I threatened them. Their leader, Morrison, looked me directly in the eyes. Most species cower when they first see us. Fear or no fear, they will die the same way, Crickstar declared. I propose we make an example of them. 1 ship against our battle fleet. When we broadcast their destruction across hegemony space, no other species will dare to resist us. The vote was swift and unanimous. The humans would face the full might of the hegemony navy. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Defiant, Captain Jake Morrison faced his senior staff in the ship's briefing room. The faces around the table showed the strain of their situation. So that's where we stand, Jake concluded after explaining their ultimatum. We can surrender and hope they treat us well, or we can fight and probably die. Chief Engineer Amy Collins was the first to speak. Captain, I've been analyzing the scans of their ships. Their technology's impressive, but it's also old. They seem to have stopped innovating centuries ago. What do you mean? Asked Lisa Hayes. Their weapons are powerful but predictable. Plasma cannons, gravity bombs, energy shields. All very advanced, but they follow established patterns. They're fighting the same way they have for hundreds of years. Lieutenant Ben Parker, the ship's tactical officer, leaned forward. Are you saying we might have an advantage? Amy nodded. Maybe. Our technology developed in isolation. We solved problems differently than they did. Our railguns, nuclear weapons, and AI systems represent completely different approaches to space combat. Danny Rodriguez pulled up a holographic display of the alien ships. Their vessels are built for traditional ship-to-ship combat. Large, heavily armored, designed to trade shots at medium range. But look at their formation patterns. They're rigid, predictable. Jake studied the display. What are you thinking? Human military doctrine emphasizes flexibility and adaptation. We use our environment, we change tactics mid-battle. We take calculated risks. From what I've seen, the hegemony fight's more like a chess game, formal, structured, honorable. And we don't fight honorably, Lisa asked with a slight smile. We fight to win, Ben replied. Sometimes that's the same thing, sometimes it's not. Jake stood up and walked to the briefing room's window. In the distance, he could see the hegemony station. More ships had arrived during the day, sleek predators gathering for what they expected to be an easy kill. Amy, what's the status of our weapons and systems? All railguns are operational. We have a full complement of nuclear warheads and conventional explosives. Our AI targeting system is functioning at peak efficiency. The ship is as ready as she'll ever be. And our chances? Amy was quiet for a moment. Against 3 ships like the ones we first encountered, I'd give us 50-50 odds. Against their entire battle group, she shrugged. Jake turned back to his crew. These people had volunteered for humanity's greatest adventure. They had signed up to explore new worlds, not to die in humanity's first interstellar war. I want everyone to understand something, he said quietly. If we fight and lose, Earth will never know what happened to us. The hegemony might decide that one human ship was enough of a threat to justify hunting down our homeworld. The room fell silent. Danny Rodriguez was the first to speak. Captain, with respect, Earth is going to face this choice eventually. If we run now, we're just delaying the inevitable. At least this way we can show them that humans don't surrender easily. And maybe we can learn something about their weaknesses, added Ben Parker. Information that might help Earth defend itself later. Lisa Hayes nodded agreement. We all knew this mission was dangerous when we signed up. The only difference is that the danger came from aliens instead of equipment failure or cosmic radiation. Jake looked around the table at his crew. These people had become his family during the long journey from Earth. Now he was asking them to die for a principle they might not even believe in. All right, he said finally. We fight. Amy, I want you to start modifying our systems for combat. Focus on mobility and unconventional tactics. Danny, analyze every piece of data we have about their ships and weapons. Find me weaknesses. Ben, start running combat simulations. I want to know every possible approach to this battle. Lisa, prepare the crew. Make sure everyone understands what we're facing. As his officers filed out, Jake remained in the briefing room. Through the window, more hegemony ships continued to arrive. He counted at least 30 vessels now, each one larger and more heavily armed than the Defiant. Humanity had reached for the stars with hope and wonder. Instead, they had found an ancient empire built on conquest and fear. Now one small ship and her crew stood between that empire and Earth. Jake had trained for many battles, but never one where the survival of his entire species might depend on the outcome. In 18 hours, the hegemony fleet would demand their final answer. The UES Defiant would give them one they would never forget. The hegemony battle fleet formed a perfect sphere around the UES Defiant, 30 warships, each one a masterpiece of ancient engineering, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and weapon arrays. Fleet Admiral Crickster commanded from his flagship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed the human vessel. Human ship, his voice crackled across the communication channels. This is your final warning. Submit to hegemony authority or be destroyed. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the tactical display. His crew worked quietly at their stations, their faces calm despite the overwhelming odds. They had spent the night preparing for this moment. This is Captain Morrison, Jake replied over the open channel. We've made our decision. We didn't come all this way to kneel. The silence that followed stretched for several seconds. Then Crickstar's voice returned, filled with cold fury. So be it. All ships open fire. Make their destruction swift but visible. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy us. All hands brace for impact, Jake announced over the ship's intercom. Lisa, get us moving. Maximum speed toward the asteroid field. The Defiant lurched forward as 30 plasma cannons lit up space around them. The first few shots missed as the human ship accelerated faster than the aliens had expected. But more beams found their target, hammering against their shields. Shields down to 60%, reported Amy Collins from engineering. Hull integrity holding, but we can't take much more of this. Chief Tactical Officer Nick Turner worked frantically at his console. Captain, entering the asteroid field now. Their formation is breaking up to follow us. Jake smiled grimly. The hegemony ships were built for open space combat. The dense field of spinning rocks would force them to spread out, reducing their concentrated firepower. Danny, deploy the drones, Jake ordered. All of them. The Defiant's launch bays opened and began ejecting what looked like small shuttles. The hegemony fleet barely noticed them, focusing their attention on the main ship as it weaved between massive asteroids. Admiral Krikstar watched the human vessel from his command deck. Cowards, they run and hide among rocks like primitive prey animals. Continue the pursuit. Destroy them. His tactical officer, a young Vraktar named Thekmor, studied his displays with confusion. Admiral, those small craft the humans launched, they're not fleeing. They're taking positions throughout the asteroid field. Irrelevant. Focus all fire on their main ship. But Thekmor continued to watch the mysterious objects. There were dozens of them now, spreading out in all directions. They moved with purpose, using the asteroids for cover just like the main ship. Aboard the Defiant, Nick Turner monitored his drone swarm through his tactical display. Each drone was a marvel of human engineering, a fusion reactor, an AI brain, a nuclear warhead, and enough fuel for one final mission. Drones are in position, Captain, he reported. Waiting for your order. Jake watched as the hegemony ships spread out through the asteroid field, trying to corner his vessel. They moved in their traditional formations, predictable and precise. Perfect targets, execute attack pattern Alpha, Jake commanded. Throughout the asteroid field, human drones suddenly came alive. They emerged from behind rocks and debris, accelerating at speeds that should have been impossible for craft their size. Each one locked onto a different hegemony vessel. Admiral Krikstar saw them coming on his displays and felt something he had never experienced before. Confusion. What are those things?
Why are they approaching our ships?
They appear to be unmanned attack craft, Thekmor replied. But Admiral, they're on collision courses. They're not trying to engage us in combat, they're trying to ram us. Impossible. No civilized species would waste military assets in suicide attacks. Destroy them with point defense systems. The hegemony ships opened fire on the approaching drones, but there were too many targets moving too fast. For every drone they destroyed, 2 more slipped through their defenses. Dr. Rachel Stone, monitoring alien communications from the Defiant Science Station, listened to the growing panic in hegemony transmissions. Captain, they're confused. They keep asking each other why we're wasting ships in suicide runs. They don't understand, Jake replied. Those aren't ships with crews to them. They're just weapons. The first drone reached its target, a hegemony cruiser that had been focusing its fire on the Defiant. The nuclear warhead detonated against the alien vessel's shields, creating a brief sun in the darkness of space. When the light faded, the cruiser was a drifting wreck. Then the second explosion came, and the third. Throughout the asteroid field, human drones found their targets and fulfilled their programming. Each detonation was precisely calculated to punch through shields and armor that had been designed to stop energy weapons, not nuclear explosions at point-blank range. Admiral Krikstar watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart by attacks that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Ships that had dominated space battles for centuries were being destroyed by weapons that threw away their own existence to achieve victory. Fall back, he ordered, his voice shaking. All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. But the damage was already done. In less than 10 minutes, 23 hegemony ships had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors limped away from the asteroid field, their formations broken and their confidence shattered. Nick Turner watched his tactical display as the enemy fleet retreated. Captain, they're pulling back. We did it. Jake couldn't quite believe it. The most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy was running from a single human ship. What's our status? Moderate damage to the hull, shields at 20%, Amy reported. But we're still in one piece and all major systems are operational. And the enemy? Danny Rodriguez looked up from his sensors. 7 ships completely destroyed, 16 more with major damage. Only 7 enemy vessels appear to be fully operational. The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed what they had accomplished. They had faced impossible odds and won, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. Dr. Rachel Stone was still monitoring alien communications. Captain, they're broadcasting on multiple channels. Word of this battle is being transmitted throughout hegemony space. What are they saying? I'm not getting exact translations, but the tone is shocked. They keep using words that translate roughly to impossible and unthinkable. Jake stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. The hegemony station still hung in the distance, but it seemed smaller now. Less threatening. Lisa, plot a course out of this system. Best speed to open space. Where are we going, Captain? Jake thought for a moment. They couldn't return to Earth, not yet. The hegemony would be looking for revenge, and humanity wasn't ready for a full-scale war. But they also couldn't run forever. Find us a place to make repairs and send a message to Earth. Our people need to know what's out here. As the Defiant limped away from the battlefield, Jake realized that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they were no longer unknown. The galaxy would never be the same. Behind them, the scattered remnants of the hegemony fleet watched the human ship disappear into the darkness. Admiral Crickster stared at his tactical displays, trying to understand how his mighty fleet had been defeated by creatures who fought like savages. He didn't know it yet, but across hegemony space, other species were receiving the same battle reports. Species that had been conquered and enslaved for centuries were learning that the invincible fleet could be beaten. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted, and it would never shift back. The news traveled faster than any ship in hegemony space. On 17 different worlds, enslaved species heard the impossible truth. A single alien vessel had destroyed most of Admiral Crickstar's battle fleet. For the first time in 3,000 years, the hegemony navy had been defeated. On the mining world of Kepler 186b, a female Netheri named Xylin crouched in the darkness of the underground tunnels. Her people had been enslaved by the hegemony for 800 years, forced to dig precious metals from their own planet's core. Her scaled hands gripped a crude energy weapon stolen from a guard. "Is it true?" whispered another rebel beside her. "Did someone really beat the hegemony fleet?" Xylin nodded, her large eyes reflecting the dim tunnel lights. The transmission came from 3 different sources. A species called humans destroyed 23 warships with a single vessel. Around her, dozens of Netheri fighters listened in amazement. They had been planning this rebellion for months, but had always assumed it would be a hopeless gesture. Now for the first time they had proof that their oppressors could be beaten. "Tonight we take the orbital station," Xylin declared. "If these humans can fight the hegemony fleet, we can fight the garrison here." Similar conversations were happening across hegemony space. On Tau Ceti Prime, the aquatic Merlani people emerged from their underwater cities with salvaged weapons. On Wolf 359, the crystalline shard singers began coordinating attacks through their psychic network. 17 worlds erupted in simultaneous rebellion. Meanwhile, Captain Tony Garcia stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, watching 5 human ships drop out of FTL near the edge of hegemony space. Earth's second wave had arrived, a small fleet carrying diplomats, scientists, and military observers. "Any sign of the Defiant?" Garcia asked his sensor operator. "Negative, sir, but we're picking up a lot of military transmissions. Something big is happening throughout this sector." Ambassador Claire Mitchell joined Garcia on the bridge. She was a tall woman with graying hair and eyes that had seen many difficult negotiations back on Earth. "Captain, we need to establish contact with the hegemony leadership immediately. If Jake Morrison started a war, then we need to find a way to end it," Garcia finished. "But first, let's figure out what actually happened." They didn't have to wait long. A Zephyrian diplomatic vessel approached under a flag of truce, its crystalline hull reflecting the light of nearby stars. The alien captain identified himself as Christarch Veltar. "Human vessels," came the translated message. "I bring an urgent communication from the Zephyrian Collective. We wish to meet with your leaders immediately." Ambassador Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "Not the Hegemony Council? Just the Zephyrians?" "Interesting," Garcia replied. "Put them through." An hour later, Mitchell sat across from the alien diplomat in the Endeavor's conference room. Christarch Veltar was a being of living crystal, his body refracting light into beautiful patterns as he spoke. "Your species has accomplished something remarkable," Veltar said, his voice like wind chimes. "In one battle you have shattered 3 millennia of hegemony dominance." "We're still trying to understand what happened," Mitchell replied carefully. "Our ship, the Defiant, was supposed to be on an exploration mission. They encountered Admiral Crickstar's battle group and destroyed most of it. The tactical reports are disturbing to those who believed hegemony military doctrine was invincible." Mitchell leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing, Christarch?" "An alliance. The Zephyrian Collective has been the junior partner in the hegemony for too long. Your victory proves that the Vraktar military can be defeated. We offer technological exchanges. intelligence about hegemony, military positions, and strategic coordination. Before Mitchell could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Endeavor. Garcia's voice came over the intercom. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have a situation. Minutes later, Mitchell joined Garcia and his officers as they watched the tactical display. Dozens of red indicators showed military activity throughout the sector. What are we looking at? Mitchell asked. Uprisings, replied the tactical officer. 17 different worlds have gone into open rebellion against hegemony forces. It started right after news of the Defiance victory spread. Garcia rubbed his face tiredly. Jake Morrison wanted to explore new worlds. Instead, he accidentally started the biggest war this galaxy has seen in centuries. On the surface of Kepler 186b, Colonel Steve Bradley crouched beside a group of Nithari rebels as they prepared to assault a hegemony communications array. Bradley commanded the Earth Marines aboard the fleet, but he had never expected to find himself training alien guerrilla fighters. Remember, he told Xylin through his translator device, hit fast and get out. Don't try to hold ground you can't defend. The Nithari female nodded, her scales changing color to match her surroundings, a natural camouflage ability the hegemony had never learned to counter effectively. Your people's tactics are very different from ours, she observed. We always fought with honor in the open, the way our ancestors did. That's why we always lost. Sometimes honor gets you killed, Bradley replied. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect the people you love. The attack came at dawn. Nithari fighters emerged from hidden tunnels and attacked the communications array from 6 directions simultaneously. They used human-taught tactics, diversions, ambushes, and coordinated strikes that kept the hegemony garrison off balance. The battle was over in 20 minutes. For the first time in 8 centuries, a hegemony military installation on Kepler 186b had fallen to native resistance. Across the galaxy, similar victories were being won. The combination of human military doctrine and native knowledge of local terrain proved devastatingly effective. Hegemony forces trained to fight conventional battles against organized armies struggled to adapt to guerrilla warfare, but the hegemony was not defenseless. On their capital world, the ruling council met in emergency session. Fleet Admiral Crickstar, his pride wounded by his defeat, demanded massive retaliation against both humans and rebels. Deploy the subjugation fleets, he clicked angrily. If these species want to rebel, we'll show them why their ancestors submitted in the first place. Elder Thexlon raised one of his 8 arms. Admiral, we must be careful. These humans have demonstrated capabilities we don't understand. Their tactical approach is unlike anything in our databases. They got lucky, Crickstar insisted. One victory doesn't make them a threat to the hegemony. But privately, some council members weren't so sure. The humans had done more than win a battle. They had inspired hope in species that had forgotten what freedom looked like. Christarch Veltar, meanwhile, returned to his people with news of his meeting with the human ambassador. The Zephyrian collective had waited centuries for an opportunity to break free from Vraktar domination. Now that opportunity had arrived in the form of a species that fought wars unlike anyone else in the galaxy. As reports of rebel victories continued to pour in, one thing became clear to everyone involved. The galaxy was changing. The old order of rigid hierarchy and unquestioned authority was crumbling, replaced by chaos, hope, and the growing realization that even the mightiest empire could fall. On his flagship, Admiral Crickstar studied tactical reports and tried to understand how his perfect military machine was being dismantled by primitive guerrilla fighters armed with stolen weapons. He didn't yet realize that the real weapon wasn't the guns or bombs the rebels were using. It was hope, the simple belief that things could be different, that freedom was possible, and that even the strongest chains could be broken. The humans had brought more than new technology to the galaxy. They had brought an idea that was far more dangerous than any weapon. The idea that no one had to accept oppression as their fate. 3 years had passed since the UES Defiant first entered hegemony space, and the galaxy barely resembled its former self. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the UES Liberty, watching supply ships distribute medical aid and construction materials to a dozen different worlds. He was no longer just a ship captain. The chaos that followed humanity's first victory had thrust him into the role of coordinator for what historians were already calling the Great Liberation. Ships from 6 different species flew in formation around his vessel, their crews working together despite centuries of enforced separation. "Admiral," called Commander Lisa Hayes from her station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command." Jake nodded. Communications with Earth had been sporadic during the past 3 years of conflict, but the news had finally reached humanity's homeworld. The response had been typically human, not conquest fleets or territorial claims, but humanitarian aid and diplomatic missions. "What's our status on the Kepler 186 relief effort?" Jake asked. Dr. Elena Foster looked up from her science station. The former Earth researcher now coordinated joint human-alien research projects from a space station that orbited no single world, belonging to all species equally. "The new water purification systems are online," she reported. "The Netheri will have clean drinking water for the first time since the hegemony enslaved them. And Elena, our fusion reactor designs are working perfectly when combined with Zephyrian crystal technology." Jake smiled. It still amazed him how quickly former enemies could become allies when they shared common goals. The Zephyrian Collective had proven to be humanity's strongest partners, their mathematical precision complementing human innovation in ways that benefited everyone. "Any word from President Xylin?" Jake asked. "She's preparing for the Free Worlds Alliance Summit next week," Lisa replied. "All 37 member species will be represented." 37 species. Jake could hardly believe how much had changed. The Netheri president had proven to be a remarkable leader, building a democratic confederation from species that had never known anything but authoritarian rule. The alliance was messy, argumentative, and chaotic, and it was thriving. A new contact appeared on the tactical display, and Jake felt his muscles tense automatically. After 3 years of war, he still expected every unknown ship to be hostile. "Identify that vessel," he ordered. The communications officer worked at his console. "It's a Vraktar ship, Admiral. Single destroyer, flying under a diplomatic flag." Jake exchanged glances with Lisa. The insectoid warriors had been their most persistent enemies throughout the conflict. Some Vraktar factions had adapted human tactics and now worked as mercenaries for various sides, but others had retreated to their homeworld and sworn eternal vengeance against the chaos bringers from Earth. "Put them through," Jake decided. The main screen flickered, revealing a young Vraktar officer whose mandibles clicked nervously as he spoke. "Admiral Morrison, I am War Chief Thekmore. I bring a message from the Adaptist faction." Jake remembered the name from intelligence reports. Thekmore had been present during humanity's first victory and had spent the past 3 years studying human military doctrine. "Go ahead." "War Chief, my people request employment. We offer our services as military advisors and peacekeepers for the Free Worlds Alliance. We have studied your methods and wish to learn more about fighting for something greater than conquest." The request caught Jake off guard. The proud Vraktar asking to serve under alien command? The galaxy truly had changed. Before Jake could respond, another officer interrupted. "Admiral, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the Outer Rim. It's Commander Pete Walker." Pete Walker had become Earth's chief diplomat to the uncharted regions of space, leading exploration missions into areas that the old hegemony had never controlled. His reports had revealed dozens of species that had lived in fear of eventual conquest. "Admiral Morrison," Walker's voice crackled across the communication system. "You need to see this. We've found something remarkable." The transmission included sensor data from Walker's ship, the UES Horizon. Jake studied the readings with growing amazement. "Lisa, are you seeing this?" "It's a ship graveyard," she replied quietly. "Hundreds of vessels from species we've never encountered." Dr. Foster enhanced the display, revealing the full scope of what Walker had discovered. "These ships are ancient, Admiral. Some of them are thousands of years old. And look at the battle damage patterns." Jake studied the wreckage more carefully. The destroyed ships came from many different species, but they all showed signs of similar weapon impacts. Plasma burns, gravity weapon damage, the distinctive marks of hegemony military technology. They were all running from the hegemony, Jake realized. This is where species came to die when they refused to surrender. The implications hit everyone on the bridge at the same time. The hegemony's 3,000-year reign hadn't just been built on conquest. It had been built on the systematic extermination of anyone who resisted. "Admiral," Walker's voice continued, "there's more. We've detected several species still alive in this region. They've been hiding here for centuries, living in fear, but they've heard about the Alliance. They want to make contact." Jake felt a familiar mixture of pride and responsibility. Humanity had come to the stars seeking new worlds and knowledge. Instead, they had become accidental liberators, giving hope to species that had lived in terror for generations. "Pete, coordinate with Alliance diplomatic teams. Let's bring these people home." Over the following weeks, Jake watched the galaxy continue to transform. The discovery of the ship graveyard had shocked even former hegemony species, many of whom had never known the full extent of their government's brutality. The Free Worlds Alliance expanded to include 43 species. The Zephyrian Collective officially withdrew from the remnant hegemony and joined the Alliance as an equal partner. Even some Vraktar factions began to embrace the concept of fighting for something other than domination. But perhaps the most significant change was harder to measure. Throughout the galaxy, species that had accepted oppression as inevitable began to believe that alternatives were possible. Democratic movements sprouted on worlds that had known only authoritarian rule. Scientific collaboration replaced the hoarding of knowledge. Hope replaced fear. Jake stood in his ready room, looking out at a convoy of ships heading toward the galactic rim. The UES Horizon led the formation, carrying diplomats, scientists, engineers, and medical personnel to worlds that had never known freedom. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. The screen showed Captain Tony Garcia calling from the diplomatic station near Earth. "Jake, I wanted you to see this before it goes public. It's a message from President Xylan to Earth." The Nithri president appeared on screen, her scales glowing with the confidence that had made her a symbol of liberation across the galaxy. "People of Earth," she began. 3 years ago, your ship arrived in our space and changed everything. You could have conquered us as others had done. You could have claimed our worlds for yourselves. Instead, you taught us to fight for our freedom. And then you helped us build something better." She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of billions of liberated beings. "Today, 43 species stand together as equals in the Free Worlds Alliance. We govern ourselves, we choose our own paths, and we face the future without fear. This is your gift to the galaxy. Not conquest, but hope." Jake turned off the display and walked back to his window. In the distance, he could see construction ships working on a new space station that would serve as a meeting place for Alliance species. The design combined architectural elements from dozens of different cultures, a symbol of cooperation that would have been impossible under the old order. A communication alert sounded, and Lisa's voice came over the intercom. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from the Horizon. Commander Walker says they've made first contact with 3 new species and all of them want to join the Alliance." Jake smiled and headed back to the bridge. Humanity's journey to the stars had begun with the dream of finding new worlds. They had found something far more valuable, the chance to help others find their own dreams. As the UES Liberty turned toward the galactic rim, following in the wake of the Horizon, Jake Morrison reflected on how one ship's arrival had changed everything. The galaxy was no longer ruled by fear and force, but by hope and choice. The old balance had collapsed completely. In its place, something better was being born.